What does it? What are the? If this is the one of the three most important pieces of legislation, what are the other two?
I would say Social Security and Medicare.
In the last, well, I can't remember the period you said.
Well, I think the last century, the lifetime. You know, there are other important, certainly, pieces of legislation. The Civil Rights Act was important, but it wasn't, you know, it did not affect directly everyone. These things affect everyone directly. And they go to a significant social and political change. You know, the idea of changing the structure of providing for families, requiring families to get a contract of insurance. Probably in my early age, that was unheard of. Not very successful when you look at auto insurance. You know, a third of the people that are by mandatory law required to have auto insurance, they don't have it. We don't know how to enforce it. I don't know whether we'll be able to enforce this. As a matter of fact, one of our problems that we have to study and look at is you may have to go to a direct payment system because it may not, you may not be able to collect it. What do we have, 16,000 IRS agents in there? I don't know. What are they going to do? How are they going to collect it? They're going to come to your house and threaten to shoot you? As a matter of fact, there are no penalties in the law. If you don't pay, there's no penalty. Why? Because we can't build prisons if everybody decides not to pay their... You know, we're on very thin new areas. And the reason we're there is we didn't go, we weren't willing to, it couldn't pass a bill of direct payment. It's just not possible. We tried it with the Clinton Act, it failed. When it was tested now, it wouldn't have passed. So we took something significantly less than what was easy to handle. But we modeled it after good Republican administration policy. You know, Massachusetts, we went up there and said, hell, if Mitt Romney can do it, why can't the country do it? But suddenly, you know, Massachusetts isn't.
When you were being stopped by the person on the street coming in, I was reading an email from a reader who went on and on about how did this was her question. I can't imagine how this health bill was passed when the majority of Americans are against it. Now, we don't know whether she's right or wrong either. We know that there are polls that say maybe 50%, no fewer than 50%, were opposed to that, to the bill as they understood it or misunderstood it, not necessarily to the concept. My point is, if there's a backlash out there, if there are people, and I suspect the people that stop you and say I'm for it, against it, understanding that probably nobody fully understands all of the impact at this point in time. Does that concern you running for re-election? Is that going to be an issue by the time you get into, well, you've got a primary opponent, which I'm interested in your reaction to that after all these years having one, but what do you think the reaction is going to be in the public? What do you expect to encounter? Is this going to be the issue that when you go out, people are going to say, I'm for, I'm against?
No, actually, I've been out a lot the last 2 weeks. I find people want to gain more insight and information as to what it's all about, and as you deliver that information and show them the effects of it and what effect it will have, they tend to be more accepting and supportive of it, actually. Let me tell you one of the examples.
You don't think that the number of people who might be against it is going to affect this primary or the general election?
I don't think I can make that prediction one way or another, but I've taken a very strong position. You may have seen it. That's not what drove me to make my decision, and if it cost me my seat, so be it. This is too important. Nobody should have made a decision on this bill based on fear of losing their seat because the electorate wasn't adequately informed. It's our job to come home and inform the electorate. I believe there's enough merit to this bill that, given the sufficient time and exposure and access to my constituency, that they will either accept my judgment as being sound or I will convince them of the rightness of my position. I think that's going to happen. But I don't think, if I felt I couldn't do it, I don't think I should turn tail and not run or not reflect what is good. That's like, that's like throwing a coin in the air or having the wind decide if you're going to go to war or not go. You don't make decisions like that based on what it's going to do to your elective process. Now, I think we made the right thing. Let me tell you the strongest arguments, some of the strongest arguments. People don't realize what pre-existing conditions mean. It doesn't mean just that I had a pre-existing condition and now I can have it covered. It means that if I'm a hard-working person and I study hard and I have an opportunity to have a job, if any one of these people have the opportunity to get a call from the New York Times tomorrow and they said, "What's your salary?" Well, Rich pays us well $200,000 a year, and the New York Times says $600,000 a year. Can you be in New York tomorrow? If they have any illness in their family, they have to think twice to say, no, maybe I can't go because my kid with cancer isn't going to be covered. My wife with a genetic disease won't be covered. Well, now that's not going to inhibit. That's going to affect and free up 22% of the workforce of the United States, so they can be as highly productive as possible and move on, and that's good. And employers, not that they take advantage of it, but a lot of employers know that some of their employees belong to the company store. They can't leave. If you've got a sickness family, you can't leave. You may not have ever thought about that, but that's very big. Now, the other thing that I really think that we're not thinking about is just as Medicare, whatever we say about Social Security, and I hear all the damn arguments, you know what the problem with Social Security is? That we passed Medicare, and we extended the human life. And maybe some people think that's bad. I happen to think that's good. Instead of 62 as the average date of death in 1934, it is now 79 or 80. And it's primarily because of Medicare. People get the treatment, get the services. Well, that's not going to only stop with the senior citizens and Medicare. Now we're going to have 100,000 people that don't die every year. We're going to have a healthier population. It's going to be reflective of what we saw in statistics of the Second World War. The average kid that was drafted in the Second World War weighed 122 pounds. If you doubt me, go check what the average kid today weighs when he goes in. He's usually 2 or 3 inches taller, he weighs more, he's stronger, and he's healthier. Our whole society is going to get healthier. Now you can make the argument, gee, that means they may live longer. Terrible, Social Security is going to be really pressed. I don't think that's bad. They're also going to be more productive. They're going to be more productive for a longer period of time. And what we recognize is that it's a gift. It's not a fright. Our problem is we have to develop mechanisms and means within our existing institutions to handle those challenges. And in our society, it's a political institution. We have to work with this to create the social legislation that organizes and focuses to handle these severe problems. But we're going to handle them. I think it's foolish for us to run in fear the sky is falling, it can't be done. Or are we going to decide, oh, it's okay for her kid to die, but my kid's going to live to be 150? The hell with that. Well, who says that, anybody in this room shouldn't have their children or their grandchildren live as long as anybody else's?